Welcome into another edition of Just the Truth. Glad to have you join me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Legal experts weigh in on Donald Trump's options after his failure to secure a $464 million appeal bond, saying that this is uncharted territory. And did Keith Olberman suggest that Donald Trump be assassinated in a response to a comment on X? We're going to talk about that in just a moment. Peter Navarro, a former trade advisor in Donald Trump's White House and was a frequent guest of mine on 94.5 The Answer, appears to be headed to jail later today. What is the horrible crime that Navarro committed? He was convicted of 2 counts of contempt of Congress for refusing to cooperate with Democrats in their investigation of Trump's questioning the results of 2020. And in other Supreme Court news, Justice Samuel Alito once again extended his freeze of a Texas law that enables state law enforcement officers in Texas to arrest people they suspect are illegally entering the United States from Mexico. Last week, Vice President Kamala Harris made history visiting an abortion clinic. This week, she's holding meetings in support of smoking weed. This and your comments on the Furman Ford text line. 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Your comments are welcome, as are your voice messages. Emails always, joey@joeyhudson.com.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills, but I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
A number of legal experts are weighing in on Donald Trump's options after attorneys for the former president said that he's not been able to secure a $464 million appeal bond that he needs following a New York civil fraud judgment against him. Trump's lawyers wrote in a court filing yesterday that obtaining the nearly $500 million appeal was a practical impossibility under the circumstances presented. David Gelman, he's a criminal defense attorney and a former deputy district attorney, called the judgment a unicorn. He argued that the judge should give Trump a lot more leeway to satisfy the bond because not even the richest man in the world has $464 million lying around, he said. A New York appeals court judge denied Trump's request late last month to delay the payment of the $464 million owed. This is a result of the lawsuit brought by New York State Attorney General Letitia James, but said that he would temporarily allow the GOP frontrunner and his sons to continue running their business during the appeals process. A New York appeals court judge previously ruled that President Trump must post a bond for the full amount of the judgment and that an independent director of compliance will be appointed. That ruling comes after New York Judge Arthur Engoron handed down his decision earlier in February after a months-long trial that began back in October, in which President Trump was accused of inflating his assets and committing fraud in financial documents. Again, this is a victimless crime. We have talked about this over and over. Nobody was hurt. The insurance companies, the institutions that Letitia James claimed had the loss, testified that they did not incur a loss. The insurance companies did their own due diligence, as did the banks and the other financial institutions that were loaning the Trump organization money. This is a witch hunt by a Democrat attorney general who's doing this simply because he can. Engoron ruled that Trump and other defendants were liable for persistent and repeated fraud, falsifying business records, issuing false financial statements, conspiracy to falsify false financial statements, insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. Gelman said that everyone needs to realize how unprecedented it is to expect anyone to come up with $464 million in an appeals bond. He says there's never been a judgment of this magnitude against a company or individual in the history of New York, so we're really in uncharted territory. New York Attorney General Letitia James sees otherwise. Gelman said that Trump has three options: not appeal, ask the court to allow the Attorney General to use his property as collateral, or take it to a federal court and say the New York law is unconstitutional on its face. Gelman said courts really don't deny bonds when there are other ways to pay. Again, because this is so unprecedented, and I don't care how rich you are, nobody has that much liquid cash. So if a court had the option to allow a defendant to use some other collateral to satisfy the bond, they typically will do so. He added there was no reason for the judge or Attorney General James to say no, saying you're dealing with Donald Trump. He's not going anywhere. He's the most famous and well-known person in the world. It's not like he can just disappear and can't be found. He makes a good point, doesn't he? The whole idea of a bond is to ensure that you come back or that someone has a financial penalty if you don't. I dare say Donald Trump's going to skip out and just leave Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue and abandon it, and all the other New York properties that he has. Former federal prosecutor Andrew Shirkowski told Fox News, he was on with Martha McCallum, that he would not count Trump out yet. Shirkowski said that even if the court denies Trump's appeal, he still has paths to move forward through federal court, ultimately to the Supreme Court, to complain about Eighth Amendment violations. Per the Eighth Amendment, which deals with cruel and unusual punishment, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. I would say that this excessive bond would fall under this category, wouldn't you? Shirkowski argued that the fines imposed on Trump were so astronomically high here that it seems unbelievable for the Constitution to permit it under these circumstances. I think, and he said, I hope, that the New York Court of Appeals looks at it appropriately. Trump attorney Alina Habba told the X22 report Monday that she was confident Trump's debt would be dismissed. Writing on his True Social platform later Monday afternoon, President Trump called the bond set by Engoron unconstitutional, un-American, unprecedented, and practically impossible for any, in all caps, company, including one as successful as mine. The bonding companies have never heard of such a bond of this size before, nor do they have the ability to post such a bond, even if they wanted to, Trump wrote. Did Keith Olberman suggest, while we're talking about Donald Trump, did Olberman suggest that Trump be assassinated? The former MSNBC host appeared to, quote, hope that former President Trump would be assassinated in a recent X post that prompted calls for his banishment from social media. Olbermann was referring to the Biden-Harris headquarters X account, flagging a clip of Trump saying that he had been persecuted worse than any president in history, including Abraham Lincoln. So what did Olbermann write? The campaign account posted, Trump says he's been treated worse than Abraham Lincoln, who was assassinated. There's always hope, Olbermann wrote, linking to the post. This is pretty blatant, isn't it? I mean, when he says there's always hope, is he not suggesting that there's always hope that Trump would be assassinated? I can't believe that the Biden campaign even posted this. Olbermann, of course, is a far-left personality. He's known for his inflammatory comments. He's recently called for the dissolution of the Supreme Court because he doesn't like some of the opinions that they have, some of the rulings they have passed down over the past couple of years, particularly Roe v. Wade. One account that responded to Olbermann's post suggested that the commentator's account should be, quote, permanently suspended for appearing to endorse someone killing Donald Trump, the presumptive nominee of the 2024 GOP nomination. Trump is trying to become only the second president since Grover Cleveland to win another White House term after losing a previous re-election bid. Multiple major media outlets and political figures have criticized Trump in the wake of an Ohio campaign speech in which he argued that the American auto industry would experience, quote, a bloodbath if Biden were to be reelected in November. While speaking to CNN's State of the Union, host Dana Bash, talking with former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, stressed that Trump cannot win the upcoming election and spun his, quote, bloodbath remark as possibly being a threat to Americans. Now, we know what he was saying, but this is Pelosi and the Democrats, again, twisting these words around. She asked, she said, we have to win this election because he's even predicting a bloodbath. What does that mean? He's going to exact a bloodbath, she asked. During a rally, this was in Vidalia, Ohio, Trump used the word bloodbath following a point that he made about putting tariffs on Chinese cars made in Mexico and sold to the U.S. consumers. Electric vehicles. That would certainly, if this happened, would certainly hurt the auto workers in the U.S. He was addressing the Chinese president when he said those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, you're going to not hire Americans and you're going to sell the cars to us. No, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars if I get elected. This is what Trump said that has caused the Democrats to stand on their heads. And this is what got him into trouble. He said, now if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That will be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars. They're building massive factories, Trump said. Again, he's talking about the devastation that it could have on the auto industry if Mexico allows China to build these massive production lines and turn out millions of cheap electric vehicles. Now, by the way, have you looked at some of the actual data on this? The reports are, let's take, for example, a Tesla. Now, look, I've made it very clear. I have no plans to buy an electric car until I absolutely have to, and I don't see that happening in my lifetime. But when you compare the cost, a Tesla, I mean, can you even get a Tesla for anything less than $60,000? Most of them are 70, 80, approaching $100,000, okay? According to reports, the Chinese are able to deliver an electric vehicle, some as cheap as $11,000. So think about that. You got an American-made vehicle by way of Tesla. Let's just say it's $60,000. Although I don't think you can get one for $60,000 with any of the bells and whistles on it. But let's say it's $60,000, and then you have a Chinese product over here for $11,000 that's made across the border in Mexico. Which one do you think people are going to buy? So Trump's right, and if this happens, it's going to devastate an already hurting automobile industry. 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Love to get your comments on the Furman Ford text line. You can leave a quick voice message as well. Peter Navarro, he's the former trade advisor in Donald Trump's administration, appears to be headed to jail later today. If this happens, Navarro will be the first member of Trump's White House to be jailed over the questioning of the 2020 election results. I'll give you all the details in just a moment. First portions of today's show brought to you by PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition. Do you need to lose a few pounds? Do you want to get healthy? Do you want to be able to fit into your swimsuit a little bit better, more comfortably before summer gets here? Well, if you call right now today, today's March the 19th, if you call 864-252-4925, go ahead and set up your appointment to talk with the coaches at PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition. By June, you can easily have lost 10, 20 pounds, or maybe more. I started the program, it'll be 4 years in July. I lost 30 pounds pretty quickly, by November or so, and I've been able to manage that weight loss maintained that weight for almost 4 years now. PhD weight loss and nutrition. When I was introduced to Dr. Ashley Lucas and her team in the Greenville office, it really was life-changing. It'll change your life as well. I was talking with a listener of the radio station, and I hope she listens to the podcast too. Just the other day, she was telling Peg, my wife, just how fabulous PhD weight loss and nutrition, how it had changed her life. Said she sleeps better. She has more energy. She's lost, 50, 60 pounds. You can have that type of success too, and you too will have the benefits of getting that excess weight off as well. 864-252-4925. If you don't have anything to write that down on, pause this podcast, come back with a pen and piece of paper, write it down. You can find them online as well at myphdweightloss.com, myphdweightloss.com. PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition, the official partner of the Clemson Tigers. Chief Justice John Roberts yesterday turned down Peter Navarro's emergency motion to stave off his imminent jail sentence. It's set to begin today, this afternoon around 2 p.m. in a Miami federal prison for his defiance of a subpoena from the House January 6th committee 2 years ago. Now think about this. Peter Navarro, who's 74 years old, he was part of the Trump administration. He was convicted of 2 counts of contempt of Congress last fall for refusing to provide testimony or documents to the congressional investigators who were probing Trump's bid to subvert, in their mind, the 2020 election. He's the first member of the Trump White House to face jail time over events stemming from the 2020 vote. Navarro's emergency application to head off his 4-month jail term was directed to Chief Justice John Roberts, who happens to serve as circuit justice for the D.C. Circuit and oversees the Washington, D.C. court there, where the former Trump trade advisor was charged and tried. Departing from the practice in most serious or high-profile legal fights, Roberts ruled on Navarro's request himself without referring it to the full court. The Chief Justice noted that a D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals panel found that Navarro failed to raise challenges to the fairness of his conviction when he first sought to remain free pending appeal. Roberts wrote in his one-page order, "I see no basis to disagree with the determination that Navarro forfeited those arguments in the release proceeding, which is distinct from his pending appeal on the merits." The House Select Committee subpoenaed Navarro in early 2022. He quickly turned down its demand, claiming that Trump's executive privilege barred him from cooperating. He was a soldier, Navarro was. He was loyal to Trump. It got him in trouble. The committee emphasized that it had asked him about many subjects not related directly to his conversations with Trump, and that could not conceivably be subject to executive privilege. But Navarro still refused to appear or turn over the records that the January 6th committee, led by Liz Cheney, were trying to get him to turn over. Though he's still set to be the first to go to prison, Navarro is actually the second Trump advisor convicted of contempt of Congress for defying the January 6th committee. Steve Bannon was convicted of 2 contempt charges in July of 2022. The judge in his case, Carl Nichols, agreed to let him remain free while he continues to appeal his convictions. Navarro's judge, Amit Mehta, rejected Navarro's effort to remain out of prison, noting that Navarro had presented no evidence that Trump actually invoked executive privilege, and that even if Trump had, it wouldn't have overcome Congress's need for Navarro's information. As Roberts points out, last week, a 3-judge panel of the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals upheld Mehta's decision and offered a long list of its own reasons. Now, Navarro and Bannon, what the courts are holding them responsible for, and what the January 6th committee claimed, is that they worked on a 2020 strategy dubbed Green Bay Sweep, which was a plan to orchestrate congressional challenges to Joe Biden's presidential electors on January the 6th, 2021, the day that the protest got out of hand. This, of course, the day that the House and Senate was meeting to certify the 2020 elections. Mr. Navarro also authored a 3-part report making largely what those who are charging him discredited claims of election fraud, one installment of which Trump cited in his now infamous tweet urging supporters to descend on Washington for a wild protest on January the 6th. We all know that Peter Navarro should not be going to jail later today. But yet you have Hunter Biden and Jim Biden and half of the Biden clan who have taken millions of dollars from foreign entities, and they're still loose, and Democrats don't believe they should be prosecuted? What kind of justice system does that kind of thing? 864-477-5639 is the Furman Ford text line. Your comments are welcome. In other Supreme Court news, Justice Samuel Alito once again extended his freeze of a Texas law that enables state law enforcement in Texas to arrest people they suspect are illegally entering the U.S. from Mexico. Portions of today's show brought to you by Furman Ford. Are you looking for a new vehicle, or maybe you need service on your existing vehicle and you don't want to have to wait weeks or a month or more to get serviced? Call Furman Ford. Better yet, just run by there. What I love about Furman Ford, they're locally owned, family operated. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line. Jim Furman, Matthew Furman, they're there. And when you call, when you email, when you stop by, you have access to a member of the Furman family. They have a great selection of pre-owned vehicles, have the best inventory of new vehicles that I've seen in a few years. And they're waiting for you to give you the best deal, the best value for your dollar. And back to the service. If you need service on your vehicle, doesn't have to be a Ford, and you do not have to have purchased it from Furman Ford. They service all makes and models. Find them online at FurmanFord.com, FurmanFord.com. So for a second time, Justice Alito yesterday extended his administrative pause as the court is weighing the Biden administration's emergency application seeking to block the law for a longer period of time. Alito issued his extension since he handles emergency matters for the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, which is the case at hand. The justice's brief order came without explanation, does not signal how he or the full court would ultimately rule. But unlike his previous orders, Alito's newest pause lasts until a, quote, further order from him or the full court. Now, his previous 2 pauses automatically ended at a given time. There was a date. There was a deadline. Just like this latest iteration was expiring yesterday afternoon, just as Alito handed down his extension. This latest extension doesn't put any time limits on it. Just says until the court can dispose of the case. The Justice Department is urging the justices to block the law. It was passed by Texas's Republican-controlled legislature last year. It asserts that it's an unprecedented intrusion into federal immigration enforcement. Now, you can make an easy argument against that because there is no federal enforcement. You agree? That's exactly why Texas passed this law. U.S. Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar wrote to the justices, "There's no ambiguity in SB 4. It is flatly inconsistent with federal law in all its applications and is therefore preempted on its face." Now, this law was signed into law by Governor Greg Abbott. It's a far-reaching statute. It makes illegal immigration a state crime, enabling state and local law enforcement the authority to arrest undocumented migrants who could then face deportation or jail time. In defending the law, Texas argued that the state has a constitutional right to defend itself, and the Biden administration is unwilling or unable to defend the border, so they're going to do it for themselves. Sounds fair to me, doesn't it, you? The state responded Plaintiffs urge the court to rush straight to the merits of their claims, but these cases do not belong in federal court at all, even apart from the fact that no state court has yet had an opportunity to construe any provision of SB 4. The Justice Department's emergency motion is joined by a similar application filed by the county of El Paso, Texas, and 2 immigrant rights groups. Again, can a state not protect its own borders? Joe Biden and the Democrats just think that they should allow, or that there's no responsibility. Texas should just allow these people to roam through their states. On the Furman Ford text line, Jennifer writes, "Hey Joey, I'm going to say something about Nikki Haley. Said don't crucify me before I explain." Okay, Jennifer, explain away. Jennifer says, "I'm not a Nikki fan, but you said something about her message on abortion, and I remember telling you back in January when she was on the campaign trail and still competing with 4 or 5 men that I think she had the best message on abortion." Jennifer says it made more sense than anything that her male opponent said or most noticeably did not say. Jennifer notes that Nikki Haley's message on abortion is easily found online. She says Republicans weren't ready to talk about the abortion issue in 2020, and I don't think they're ready 4 years later. Some people will vote on that issue alone. I had asked for feedback yesterday on what is the message. What should the GOP be talking about when it comes to abortion? The Joe Biden has made it front and center as one of his key campaign issues. Vice President Kamala Harris made it very clear last week when she became the first vice president to attend Planned Parenthood. We've talked about that quite a bit over this past week. So what is the Republicans' response? Because there is going to be a discussion about it. Many of you chimed in about this yesterday. Jeff wrote, Donald Trump makes some stupid comments that are pushing independent and conservative women away, but I look at what he does, not what he says. They don't. You're right, Jeff. Faye says, Joey, as long as the left media talks about bloodbath, conservative TV and radio need to constantly play Schumer when he threatened the new Supreme Court justices. God bless the USA, and we must win, and we must vote in record numbers for Trump. Katrina, hi, Joey. In response to your question about a third-party candidate or more this year for president, the two-party system has created 2 gangs of thugs to run this country, and they have run it into the ground. If it takes splintering off factions from each to get people's attention and hopefully give us more options and leaders, I'm all in. As for if it will help or hurt Biden or Trump, I don't think that can be measured, and I'm not sure it matters in this election cycle. The hardcore gang members will vote whoever their tribe endorses. That leaves the emotional voters and those who are intellectually dishonest looking at alternatives. Any voter undecided at this point or thinks things are great in our current economic climate don't deserve the privilege, she says. Katrina says, on the local front, we welcome Representative Norman's efforts in regard to Adam Morgan. Representative Timmons seems pleasant, but several of his votes were lockstep with Kevin McCarthy. We wrote to him several times about these votes with no response. Let's try a new voice. Have a great day, Katrina. Thank you, Katrina. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line as well, 864-477-5639. Michael writes, good morning, Joey. There's no doubt that a third-party candidate would take votes away from the Democrats, mainly the independents. Dedicated MAGA Republicans will not waver, and there's enough of them to overcome the loss. Susan says, I'm taking the NBC Double Haters report you aired with a grain of salt. I suspect that people's comments were carefully curated to fit a narrative, and a lot was left on the cutting room floor, especially comments that favored Trump. Susan's referencing a segment that I aired in yesterday's episode. If you missed it, go back and listen to episode 104, in which NBC had their roving reporter, I forget his name, but he was in Wisconsin talking with people on the streets and basically held up a poster that had Donald Trump's photo on it. It had Joe Biden's photo on it, and then it had a silhouette of an unnamed candidate. And the question was, would you vote for the unnamed candidate? Would you vote for someone else rather than the two? And a lot of people now Susan's right. They probably went through a lot of people, and they selected the ones that ended up in this about 2-minute segment. I'm sure they chose those who fit the narrative that they were promoting. They called it the double haters. They don't like Trump. They don't like Biden. So they go for that potential third-party candidate. Our text of encouragement today: what you do today can improve all of your tomorrows. God bless. Joel. Thank you, Joel. Appreciate that. Your comments are welcome as well on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-5639. Leave a quick voice message. Email me, Joey at joeyhudson.com. So last week, Vice President Kamala Harris made history visiting the Planned Parenthood abortion clinic. This week, she's holding meetings in support of smoking weed. Before we get into that, portions of today's show brought to you by Discounted Appliance Warehouse. If you're tired of buying appliances from the inexperienced sales staff in the big box stores who have no knowledge whatsoever, then head over to Pickens and talk with my friends Jeff, Johnny, Kyle, the whole team at Discounted Appliance Warehouse. I promise you, they have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating, nearly perfect reviews on Google. They'll help you pick the appliances that are right for you and your family in a price range that is right for you and your family. They'll show you around their warehouse, over 11,000 square feet, that's slammed full of new appliances, and they'll help you find the ideal solutions. They have you covered well beyond the sale, and I know that personally because they're quick to service what they sell. And they're proud to offer Speed Queen, the only washer and dryers with up to a 7-year warranty on parts and labor. Discounted Appliance Warehouse. Find them online at dawpickens.com. Better yet, just run over to Pickens today. Let Jeff know that you heard him here on Just the Truth. Vice President Kamala Harris called the current classification of marijuana under federal law absurd during a White House event and said that she's looking forward to seeing what the Drug Enforcement Administration decides about moving it to a different category. She was quoted as saying, "I'm sure DEA is working as quickly as possible and will continue to do so, and we look forward to the product of their work." Harris said this at the beginning of a roundtable discussion on cannabis policy with Governor Andy Beshear of Kentucky and a handful of people who received pardons from President Biden for low-level cannabis offenses, and also in attendance was rapper Fat Joe. The Vice President's comments came as anticipation builds that the DEA is about to release its final decision on the Department of Health and Human Services recommendations to move marijuana or cannabis with more than 0.3% THC to a less restrictive schedule under the Controlled Substance Act. Marijuana is currently classified as a Schedule I narcotic, which is the same as LSD and heroin, which means it's deemed to have no acceptable medical uses and a high propensity for abuse. Now, this is a topic that can get very lively at times. The White House event is the latest sign that the Biden administration plans to promote its efforts to overhaul federal marijuana policies this year ahead of the November elections. Biden also cited his moves to pardon federal marijuana offenders and loosen federal weed restrictions during last week's State of the Union address. According to a number of polls, 70% of Americans back marijuana legalization, and that position is particularly popular among young voters, which is a crucial demographic that Joe Biden is struggling to maintain support from. Biden has issued 2 executive orders. In October 2022, he pardoned people with certain nonviolent federal marijuana offenses, instructing HHS to assess if marijuana should be reclassified within the federal list of controlled substances. In late 2023, HHS sent a letter to the Department of Justice recommending that cannabis be moved to a less restrictive category, but the nation is still awaiting the DOJ's final decision. Biden expanded his pardon declaration in December, allowing more people to receive relief, a population that Harris on Friday numbered in the tens of thousands. Does it surprise you? Are you part of that 70% that they cite in the national polls of people who believe that marijuana's no big deal? 864-477-5639 is the Furman Ford text line. Keep those texts coming. You can leave me a voice message. The emails are welcome as well, joe@joeyhudson.com. That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thank you for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studio to lose weight for the last time. Visit myphdweightloss.com. Be sure and join our mailing list. Just go to joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails with the most up-to-date news. Also find me on YouTube. Just search for Joey Hudson or send me a quick text. I'll send you the link directly to you. We're back again tomorrow. Hope you'll plan to join us then. Oh, and by the way, let me encourage you. If you enjoyed today's segment, be sure and recommend Just the Truth to a friend or two or three or four or five. Forward this to someone right now. Forward it to your best friend. Forward it to your kids. Forward it to a family member. Forward it to maybe someone you go to church with. And let's grow our community. We're back again tomorrow. Again, hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, folks, God's got this. He's still in control.